Hello and welcome back to Mr. C's Intro to Business class, where we are shifting gears entirely to a new topic. We are looking at human resources. Human resources is a very important aspect of a business. It is responsible for the most important resources of all, humans. So the Human Resources Department is responsible for all activities involved in acquiring, training, maintaining, and evaluating employees. What does that mean? Acquiring is a fancy word for getting. Training, whoa, why did it skip back? Anyway, sorry. Training. So when you hire someone, you need to make sure that they're able to do the job safely and properly. That requires training. Maintaining. So when we say maintaining employees, we refer to businesses making sure that their employees are looked after and kept happy and safe and well, and their needs are met. And some businesses do this far better than others. An example of businesses doing this very well would be Google. If you look at Google's workplace, there's slides all over the place. There's nap pods that you can literally go to sleep in at work if you wish. They provide free food every single day. You just got to go to the caf, and we're not talking school cafeteria. Oh, no. We're talking prime rib and garlic mashed potatoes. We're talking high-tier meals, folks. Very nice offices, where everything is clean and open, and they have wonderful views. And this is all done for, I'm not going to say darker purpose, but all of this is done very deliberately. And it's to keep employees happy so that they're productive. It's to keep them liking their work so they stay at their workplace. And it's also to make them want to spend more time in the office so that they're getting more work done. So it's all very deliberate. And if a company gives you the best treatment, they expect the best work. Google is sort of like the Navy SEALs in the sense that 1 out of every 500 people that try to become a Navy SEAL will make it. And these are, the cream of the crop in terms of physical performance and, training and all this. And 1 out of 500 people make it. With Google, I don't remember. I think it's 1 in every 1,000. I don't remember. But they're very selective as to who they hire. They only take the best. And so when we say maintaining employees, we're referring to, keeping them happy and maintaining their emotional stability and, making sure they're financially looked after, et cetera, et cetera. And evaluating employees. So, when teachers give students a task, we evaluate students' performance to make sure that you're learning what we're trying to teach and to make sure that you understand certain concepts and that you're ready to move forward to learn new things and grow as an individual. Companies do the same thing, except they're evaluating your ability to perform a job and to make sure that you're performing it to the standards that they need. Because businesses have goals that they need to accomplish. And in order to accomplish those goals, they need to make sure that employees are working to a certain standard. Now, in business, there are 2 types of people, I guess, so to speak. There's 2 tiers of people. The first tier is called the labor force. So these are people who are involved in the creation of a product or the delivery of a service. So these are people who have direct contact with the products or the customers, and this is the vast majority of people. For example, if you were looking at a restaurant, let's say, a chef would be part of the labor force. They're someone who creates the products, right? They create the dishes that are sold. And someone who'd be part of the delivery of a service would be the waiters. They're responsible for performing the service of interacting with the customer and assessing the customer's needs and fulfilling those needs and delivering the products from the chefs to the customer. So these are both different jobs, but they're both part of the labor force. And the vast majority of people are in the labor force. The second tier is called the management tier. These are people involved in important decision-making processes. So they're people who make big decisions about the company. For example, they might, if we're going back to our restaurant, managers will decide who works when and who does what job and what our menu will be. Sometimes usually in a restaurant, chefs are also managers, but that's a complication. But managers are people who make decisions about how the business operates. So what the hours of operation are, who will buy our products from, what our prices should be, how we're going to market things, etc. Should we open a new restaurant? For anyone who doesn't know, CEO stands for Chief Executive Officer. It's essentially a CEO is the head of the organization. They're the top decision maker. Now, there are many levels of management. For example, if we were to look at, let's say McDonald's. There is a CEO of McDonald's, someone who is responsible for the big decisions of the entire company worldwide. And then a step below that would be, say, the North American chief of CEO or the North American manager. I'm not sure what the title might be. But, someone who's responsible for making the decisions across all McDonald's chains in Canada. And then there'll be someone who does the exact same thing for the United States. And there'll be someone who does the same thing for India, in every other country. And then another step down would be someone who makes the decisions for all McDonald's in Ontario. And then a step down further would be someone who makes all the decisions for McDonald's in Ottawa. And then another step down would be all the person who makes all the decisions in a single McDonald's restaurant. So management has a lot more steps involved, but there's usually there's far fewer people in this management group. And we'll get into why later on. But usually management jobs require significantly more education and experience with the company. And it really depends. Some labor jobs require more education than management. It really depends on what industry we're talking about. But anyway, lots and lots and lots of people have direct contact with the product. That's the labor force. Fewer people and are mainly responsible for decision making. That's management. Now, we're going to switch gears and look at what's called the labor market. Now, do you guys remember, hopefully you remember, when I explained what a market is? Little refresher, if you don't remember, a market is a group of people and businesses. And there are consumers who demand products, and there are businesses that supply those products. And what happens is the consumers and the businesses come to an unspoken agreement in terms of how much of a product they will buy at a certain price and how much of the product businesses will supply for a certain price. Now, the labor market works very similar, but almost in the opposite, in the sense that in this case, all of the individual people are part of the supply. And in a manner of speaking, they're the product. They are selling their services. They're selling their skills. And the consumers are the businesses. And they are the ones that want to buy these skills that workers are offering. So it works on a very similar way. It's just sort of flipped. Instead of the individual people being the consumers who buy things, in the labor market, it's the businesses who buy people. And when I say they buy people, they hire John to be an accountant because of his accounting skills, and they agree to pay him a certain amount for those skills. Now, both parties, being the businesses and the people, look at this labor market for different things, and I want to show you what those things are. So let's start with the employers. Now, before we go into any further, I just want to explain, in most businesses, the people who hire someone are the HR managers. HR stands for Human Resources. So they may not be the boss. Like if you were to get a job in the government, for example, you would be hired by a human resources manager. But the person who tells you what to do would be someone else, and they would be the department head of, I don't know, policy. I don't know. There's lots and lots and lots of department heads in the government. But anyway, so usually HR is responsible for hiring people. That's one of the human resources responsibilities. Anyway, we're going to look at what employers look for in the labor market and what employees look for in the labor market. So let's start with employers. So when they look out at this labor market, all these people looking for jobs, they look at what skills are available. So what can employees do right now? They will also look at what education and training is available. For example, right now, artificial intelligence is gaining more and more traction in terms of its ability to help businesses, mostly in the manufacturing industry. For anyone who doesn't know, manufacturing means to make stuff. So overall, it is cheaper to have a robot make something than it is a human to make something. So right now, there's new degrees being offered by universities such as Queen's in what's called machine learning. So this is a new degree class of machine learning. I believe it's a master's degree. But it's something that we've never seen before. There's never been a degree called machine learning before. And that's because artificial intelligence is fairly new to the mainstream. Now, artificial intelligence has been around for a while, but being able to openly use it for almost anything you want is new. So, the degree that teaches you how to teach machines, essentially, is pretty new. So if a company is looking to train a whole bunch of robots to do different tasks, then they would be looking to see what the new degrees in teaching robots tasks are, right? So they look to see what education is available. They also look at economic conditions in the area. Now, this is something we won't get into too much because we don't have a lot of time. But depending on where companies are looking for people, they will offer different salaries. For example, if there's an area where people are not making a lot of money, then they can get away with offering less money because people need the money. Versus, in areas where high-paying jobs are common, then they will offer to pay more. For example, it's virtually guaranteed that if you look for an IT job in Ottawa, you'll probably do fairly well. IT which stands for information technology, is a fairly high-paying industry. However, if you were to move to Silicon Valley in the United States, guaranteed you will make more money there because, it's called Silicon Valley. I don't know what the percentage is, but the vast majority of jobs in Silicon Valley in the skilled labor sector are IT related, and they're all paid very well, which means that if a company wants to get highly skilled employees, they have to pay very well as well. So that's all we're going to talk about that. There's more things here, but we're going to move on. Arguably the most important thing is skills likely required by the company for current and future work. This is a big one. So when the company is looking to get more employees, they first of all, they need to make sure that the skills that are available match what is needed. If you're looking for someone to program machines, then you're not going to hire someone who's very skilled in carpentry. That doesn't make sense. You need to match the skills that are available to the skills that you need. Furthermore, companies are more and more often looking towards the future. So they not only want to hire someone who's good right now, they want to hire someone who's good right now and is likely to be good in the future. And when I say good, I mean is able to do their job to a high degree of skill, a high performance level. Anyway, so that is what HR managers, people who are responsible for hiring, look for. Let's switch to employees. So employees look at, first of all, who's hiring, what employers are available. Going back to IT, Ottawa is rapidly growing in terms of the IT sector. If you go, you guys, I'm sure, have seen this a lot. The tech sector is quite near West Carleton. Well, I mean, relatively near. If you drive on March Road and you go towards, I suck at directions straight up. If you go towards Carling Avenue, so if you head towards downtown, I guess, very generally speaking, you will come by a whole bunch of IT firms, and there's the Brook Street Hotel is there, and there's all these buildings for companies that offer software. So more and more IT companies are hiring in Ottawa. For the longest time, Toronto was the IT sort of the head of IT in Canada, and by that I mean that Toronto had the most IT jobs available, and I believe it still does. But Ottawa is growing in terms of available IT positions. Next, and this is super important, is what skills are in demand. So remember we talked about employers look to see what skills are available and what skills they need. By contrast, employees look to see what skills are in demand. And this is very important for you guys. When you're deciding what you want to study in college or university, or what you want to train in, you need to make sure that what you are training in is what employers want. Otherwise, employers aren't going to hire you because you don't have what they want. You know, it's nothing against you personally. They're paying the money, so they're going to pay money for what they want. So it's a good idea when you're choosing what you want to study and what you want to train in, try and make sure it's something that employers will pay for. The employment rate is also, like right now, the employment rate is abysmal. No one's hiring right now because of COVID-19. Before that, I mean, increasingly jobs are getting harder and harder to come by. And so this is more sort of a general indicator in terms of how easy it is to get a job. If you ask your parents, they will probably tell you that it was much easier to get a job back then than it is now. And that's because the supply of labor was lower, or the supply of skilled labor was lower. You know, for example, my parents, when they got a degree, they were set. You know, they could get not any job they wanted, but they could, if you had a degree, 30, 40 years ago, if you had a degree, you would get a job. You know what I mean? Unless you just didn't want one. Now, having a degree isn't really a big deal. Almost everyone has a degree now in something. So having a degree is kind of a baseline requirement. And from there, usually additional training is required. But anyway, we're not going to spend more time on employment rate because, again, we're restricted on time. Employees also look for salaries, benefits, and quality of work and life, etc. Some people are able to choose a job because they love the work, and they don't care about the salary or the benefits. And that's, if you have that kind of conviction, fantastic. I wish I had that kind of conviction where I could just do a job. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy teaching. It is a hard job, but I enjoy it. But it's also nice to know that I have healthcare right now. So, for me, the benefits of being a teacher in terms of the fact that they have a good healthcare plan are significant to me. So when you are choosing a job, you may want to consider the jobs that are more likely to offer things like benefits, pension. If you don't know what a pension is, it's you pay more money back to the company. And in return, what happens is that money is sort of put away and saved for later. And then when you retire, you slowly get that money back. So essentially, you get a smaller salary even though you're not working anymore. And I mean, that's a very reduced explanation as to what a pension is. But some people don't think about that. And it's important to think about things like that. So you want to consider what your salary is, and that will change depending on what industry you're working in. You want to consider, whether they offer health care or not, or, whether you get a pension or not. And work-life balance. Some jobs have very poor work-life balance. For example, being a lawyer. Being a lawyer is a very high-paid job, and it's a very high-skilled job, but it's also pretty infamous for having brutal hours, and this will depend on what kind of law you're operating in. But being a lawyer requires doing huge amounts of research, and lots and lots and lots of reading and going to meetings and strategizing. And if you like that stuff, fantastic. But typically the work-life balance for a lawyer is not great. But the salary is fantastic, the benefits are fantastic, but the quality of life is not so great because you work a lot. Anyways, all to say, the rectangle. Shoo! Thank you. Both of these groups, the employers and the employees, want to know what jobs will be popular in the future. This is known as occupational forecasting. Now, this is hard to do because technology is constantly growing, but it's something for you to think about, is what jobs will become popular in the future. Now, no one's expecting you to gaze into a crystal ball and know this with absolute certainty, but it is worth considering. Now, we've talked about what labor is. We're going to break down labor further into 4 different categories. There is unskilled labor, which requires little training, i.e. 1 day. You can become productive very quickly, so that means you can start working right away. No specific education is required. So, for example, if you're working in a grocery store and you're moving carts around, that would fall into this category. If you are stocking shelves, that might fall into this. I'm trying to think. The unskilled labor pool is shrinking. More and more jobs require some skill. But anyway, it's jobs that you can start right away. Some construction jobs are unskilled labor. For example, when I was younger in university, I worked a very baseline construction job where I just did what the bosses told me to do. But most of it was either cleaning up construction sites or moving lumber from a truck to a work site, or making tools available and stuff like that. So I had to wear gear and stuff like that to be safe, and I got paid fairly well for what it was. But I needed a job quickly, and I needed a job that I didn't have to train for, and I just needed something to make some money. And so I got a job like that. I didn't even get a day of training. I think I got like a 30-minute tutorial. And then I was right to work. Okay, next is semi-skilled labor. This needs some instruction. Employees will become productive after a few days of training. So this is something like being a cashier. You can't just walk into a grocery store and start being a cashier, mainly because you need to learn how a cash register works, and every company has their own software to operate a cash register. Now, this is an older slideshow. That's not particularly true. You need to get a special license and stuff like that. But once you have a truck driving license, you need to learn how to drive the particular truck that the company has, and then you're good to go. So the majority of training is done before they get the job, and that's why it falls into this category. All right. Now, skilled labor. Labor is for positions that require or that need training from an educational institution. So this is the most... Well, actually, I'm not sure if it's the most common. I don't want to say something that I don't know is true. For example, being an electrician. So you graduate high school, you go to Algonquin, you study electrician. I don't know what the the word for the theory is. But you study how circuitry works, and you study how to install it, and you study how to work with different electrical components, and then you're given a degree, and then you're able to do electrician jobs. Same thing with plumbing or with welding. A good portion of trades fall into skilled labor because you need to learn how to perform an array of jobs under the umbrella of that trade. So, for example, with carpentry, you need to learn how to work with different tools and different natural resources. And if you want to be a welder, you need to learn to work with different torches and different materials, stuff like that. If you want to be a police officer, you need a basic degree in anything, and then you go to the police academy where they teach you how to be a police officer. Now, professional labor is the one that requires the most amount of training, and it involves what's called a professional designation. So this goes beyond a university or college degree. So if you want to be a doctor, you get a degree, then you go to med school, and then you undergo, I believe it's 7 years of training, and then you get a doctorate, and you in health sciences, and then you are a doctor. If you want to be an accountant, for example, you get a university degree in business, studying or focusing on accounting, and then afterwards you have to get a designation. I believe it's CPA, which stands for Chartered Professional Accountant. And so a CPA is only given to people who exhibit a high degree of skill in accounting operations. If you want to be a lawyer, would fall under this. You get a degree, and then you go to law school, and you study law school for, I believe it's 3 years, and then you get certified in whichever field of law you want to study. Anyway, that's the 4 categories of labor. Let's look at an example of a restaurant. So we have unskilled labor, dishwashers, bussers. If you don't know what bussers is, they're the people who clean tables. So if you go to a restaurant like these people, and once they've eaten, there'll be dirty plates and dirty utensils and empty glasses and an empty bottle on the table. Probably some crumbs and stuff too. Bussers will come in and they will take the dishes off the table, and they will remove the glasses and the utensils and the bottle, and they'll clean the table. And that's an important job because it keeps the tables clean and sanitary so that, there isn't mold on the tables or, just sticky stuff that will get on people's clothing, etc. It's an important job for a restaurant to have, but it doesn't require a lot of training. You just need to teach someone how to handle glassware and how to clean a table. And that's really it. Semi-skilled labor. So servers and line cooks. So being a server is an important job in terms of, you represent the company essentially. You talk to the customers. You are responsible for the experience customers have. And so that requires more training. You need to learn how to take orders and how to keep track of a dozen orders at a time. That's a lot of information. You need to learn how to navigate the particular restaurant that you are serving in. You need to learn how to give orders to the chefs. You don't just say, hey, prepare blank, blank, and blank. You write it in a certain way and you fill out tickets and stuff like that. Line cooks need to be trained on how to make particular dishes and how to use particular equipment. Now, a line cook is not the same as a chef. A line cook is not much more, but it's more basic than being a chef. They have less responsibility. They're not responsible for full dishes. They're the ones who, well, that's a sous chef. I was going to say they're the ones who chop vegetables, but I believe that's actually a sous chef. I'm not sure. Anyway, skilled labor. So people who require a degree of some kind. So a manager would be skilled labor because usually they will have a degree in business administration, or they'll have a degree in the culinary arts. And so they have a lot of education about how to run a restaurant. And then finally, professional labor. So chefs. So a chef is someone who has a high degree of culinary skill and they have a professional designation. So there's a difference between studying culinary arts and having a professional chef designation. One is higher than the other, and by higher I mean more skill is required and it commands more money and it's held with higher esteem, sort of thing. So anyway, that's how those 4 tiers of labor would fall into place in a restaurant. All right, so let's look at the importance of skilled labor. So a skilled employee means that a business can save money because the worker can usually produce a better product or service than someone who does not have that training. Employers want employees to be productive, so they want them to do as much as possible in a certain amount of time. The more you can accomplish in a certain amount of time while still doing it properly, the more productive you are. The more they produce in hours that they work, the more profit the business can make. So for example, let's say an employee is able to make 5 dishes in an hour. Now, that's a certain level of productivity. Whether it's good or bad will depend on the dish. We're using restaurant example, by the way. Now, let's say that someone who has additional training comes in and is able to make 10 dishes in an hour. Same dish, but they're able to do more because they've learned, new techniques and time-saving techniques and stuff like that. So the employee who is a higher level of skill is able to make more products in the same amount of time. So they're more productive. And therefore, employers will value skilled employees more. And the more skill they have, the more value they have. So here's another example. If an employee produces 1,000 units in 1 week and is paid $500 a week, the approximate cost of labor for each unit is 50 cents. 500 divided by 1,000. What if the employee made 1,200 units? Then it would be $500 a week divided by 1,200. So it would be less than 50 cents. So you're paying less per unit, per product. And so this essentially amounts to the employee saving the employer money. So, I already said this, but just for the sake of repeating, productivity is the amount of goods or services that a worker produces in a given amount of time. Businesses are always looking, like I already said this, but yeah, businesses are always looking to improve productivity. Always. There's usually regular training sessions where managers share different and better ways, or not necessarily better, but time-saving ways to get a job done. If you are able to work faster than someone else, i.e. if you're able to accomplish more than someone else in the same amount of time, provided, of course, that they're the same level of quality, then you will be valued more. It doesn't make sense to do more of something if it's of lower quality. Like if you're able to make 20 dishes in an hour, we're going back to the restaurant thing again. If you're able to make 20 dishes in an hour, but half of them are burned or half of them are raw, then they're of no value. In fact, they're less than no value. They're a cost because the company had to pay for all the ingredients that went into that, which they now can't sell, right? So they've lost on that. So important thing to remember is the more you can do in an hour, the better, provided that the quality is there. Something else, workplace stress is a big thing these days. You're probably experiencing stress in high school, and you're probably experiencing stress right now. Everyone's experiencing stress right now with COVID-19, but just generally speaking, workers are finding that work can be more stressful because the demands on them are higher than what they used to be. And that has to do with changes in technology and changes in worker skill, and a bunch of other things. But yeah, in terms of being productive, I guess the downside of having more productive employees is they can be more stressed because they're working harder. I guess the trick then would be to find ways that you can be more productive without being more stressed. And that leads us nicely into the importance of happy labor. So having a positive attitude is very important, not only in your personal life, because it'll just make you happier. Being positive changes how your brain works, but that's a whole different topic. But having a positive labor force is important too, because studies have shown that happy employees are more productive than unhappy employees. Their work is better, they produce more work, and they're more likely to continue working for you. So, I mean, not only is making your employees happy sort of part of being a decent person, but it's also, from a business perspective, it makes sense, literally, to have your employees be happy. Okay, so that's it for human resources. We still have to go through motivation. You can watch this video if you want. You don't have to. It just gives you some interesting statistics about how the workforce is changing. I think you should watch it, but you don't have to. But that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found some of the info here useful, and not just for the class, but for your actual life going forward. If you have questions about this stuff, by the way, you're welcome to email me or talk to me during my office hours. And yeah, I will see you in the next video, which will be called Motivation. All right, see you there. Bye.